Hi, I'm Greg Burns, founder of Nature's Image Farm and Endura Hive wax-dipped equipment. Hey, as large family beekeepers, we saw a major need to do way better in protecting our investment with our beekeeping equipment from the elements for the long haul. So I coupled our practical beekeeping experience with our wood science background to create the Endura Hive wax-dipped line of beekeeping equipment. Our unique wax dip process expels water from the wood, replaces and impregnates it with our proprietary blend of microcrystalline wax, offering superior weather protection without the mess or expense of paint. Our equipment is protected from the weather inside and out, preventing box rot, fungal growth, and decomposition. That's a huge savings in both time and money. No more reworking tired, worn out boxes year after year. Our wax-dipped equipment is proudly made in the USA. So protect your investment with Endura Hive wax-dipped equipment. No paint, no rot, no hassle. Endura Hive, built to endure.
Well, hey guys, welcome back to another Stream Team Beekeeping Chat. Bruce, Brian, look at you guys, never looking better. I like the hats.
Well, there's a theme tonight with you coming to my place on Friday. There is a theme with the hats, so I'm pretty excited about getting all those boxes.
Man, it's going to be a lot of fun. For those who don't know, we've got an Alabama equipment run where we're bringing down the absolute best in wax dip to several beekeepers down in the Alabama area, including Bruce. And we did something special for Bruce and his boxes to kind of commemorate the trip, and a way to say thanks for Bruce for hosting. We really dressed his boxes up. So looking forward to getting those to you. Bruce went all in, just the absolute best box to the nines, the best wax dipping, the best box, Propola, Endura Hive. Bruce, I'm sure you got to be pretty excited about that.
I am excited about it. I really am. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to give them a try. And what I'm going to do, you know, earlier today, people were talking about, I posted a picture of the boxes that you're going to be bringing in that you sent me. And people, you know, a lot of people were talking about how nice they looked. A couple of people just talked about the price. And I said, well, you know, I mean, I didn't really say anything, but it is true. They are, you know, a little more expensive. However, you know, if you can get a box to last 20 years, even 15, 20 years, but they may last longer, you know, is it worth that instead of having to replace them 3 or 4 times in that same time frame? So that's kind of what you do. You pay, cry once, buy once, cry once is the term you hear. And to me, I'm at a point in my beekeeping place to where, in my beekeeping journey, to where I've been able to figure out how to keep enough bees alive to make a little bit of money. And so I do have some money that I can start putting towards nicer things. And by doing that, I think it'll actually improve my situation, because I won't have to be replacing boxes constantly. But it's going to be a process, because I got 70 boxes coming, I guess, or whatever you're bringing. And I've got more colonies than that. And so it's going to take a while to get it all done, maybe a few years to get them all kind of replaced. My plan is to replace them as the boxes rot, and I may just stick some. I'm going to stick some out there even before all my boxes are rotten anyway. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it, Greg. I appreciate you bringing them down. We got some other folks who are going to be bringing them down for too, and I think everybody's pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it's going to be great seeing them. They got a lot of folks coming down there. Brian Lee, Toby Reeder, got Miss Lisa Gowan, her mentee, her newbie with Hives for Heroes. Also, ordered some equipment. I'm making a stop before that to a fellow Dennis Sherrill. And I'm probably leaving somebody else out. I'm going through the stack of
Mike. We got Mike Berry.
Mike Berry. I think Joey Rawls and someone else is coming along. Yeah. So we've got a 30-foot enclosed trailer. Yeah, it's going to be packed, and then we're going to have the back of the truck packed. So awesome. Really, that's a good run. Should be So I really appreciate all you guys and all your support. A lot of big and exciting news in regard to all of this that will kind of launch and let loose a little bit later. But Yeah, price does matter, and for folks who are, price conscious, not all things are created equal. Matter of fact, not all wax dipped is even created equal. You may find a cheaper box, but you won't find one that's wax dipped as well, done correctly. And when you really think about it, a deep box that's $30 to $40 assembled and wax dipped the right way. You go buy a budget unassembled box for $12 to $14. You assemble it, you paint it, and then you replace it in 3 to 5 years because it's rotten out. It adds up quick. And not to mention, what Bruce has done is he's taken it to a whole other level. It's a beautiful wax dipped box, but it's a Propola box on top of all that. And there is some phenomenal research that is really hitting the airwaves about the benefits of propolis and the health benefit that actually has inside of the colony. So you could look at it. This is going to be a way that Bruce isn't going to be replacing rotten boxes. Bruce is never going to be painting these boxes or reworking them, but he's also actually doing something that benefits the health of his bees just by putting the right box in place. Like, that is also a really big deal. And everything we have to put a price on. But how do you put prices on some of these things? It's going to be really hard. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. I'm looking forward to maybe digging in some bees with Bruce on Saturday, see what we get into. I wanted to text you today and say, hey, is it too soon to start grafting? So maybe we'll come down in a couple weeks.
And maybe you can help me figure that out.
Maybe we can put a plan together. Brian's got some boxes here to pick up too. He's got some Endura Hive boxes, and it's that time of year, isn't it, Brian?
Yeah.
I don't know if
sounds like everyone is so close to just dialing it in.
Just dial it in.
I'm going to pretend like I have one.
We've got to get Bruce. I've got to bring you one down. I've got to bring you one down.
People in the comments, can you believe I've been a part of this team here through the whole time that Brian's even been developing these things, he and Jason, and I still don't have one.
Unbelievable.
Jason sent me some of the original way back when they were just putting the idea together to try out, but they were just the very basic model. I never did. So, but I'm gonna that pocket dial thing that you have. I think that'll be real handy for checking out, figuring that queen stuff out, and I'll look forward to that. But anyway, I look forward to it, Greg. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be real fun.
Should I bring my gloves?
I would bring gloves just in case. I do have nitro gloves you can wear if you want, but if you want to bring them, you can. You don't have to, but you might. I don't think we'll get stung up like you did last time, Greg. They're not quite that crazy. Where we're going to go, they're not that crazy, but it never hurts to be prepared. And like I said, I could probably the gloves I have are not probably your size. They're probably not big enough. You got bigger hands than I do. You got these big old bear claws. And but I've got some nitro gloves you can wear if you don't bring them, just in case. Whatever you want to do is fine with me.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting a couple stings at least. Yeah. Well, before we get going, tonight's big point of conversation or point of contention or point of controversy or all of the above is nukes versus packages. Don't waste your money on what? Which one is actually better and why? We're going to dig into that, and it's going to get uncomfortable. It's going to get thick. We're going to step on some toes. I guarantee it. But we're going to be coming from a reference point of truth and fact, not warm, fuzzy feelings. And we're going to get into that a little bit more tonight. First, I want to quickly thank Doug and Bill at the Midwest Honeybee Expo up in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Man, we just got back from that, and what a phenomenal opportunity that is. Those guys saw a need in that part of the country to put together a conference, and they really knocked it out of the park. It was an honor for us to be a part of all of that. I'm going to put a video together and kind of share some of that, but so many great speakers, great vendors, great people. And man, wait till you see the panel discussion. There's a lot more to this story. We don't have time to get into it tonight. That is definitely, that's a kind of a long story believe it or not. But imagine, if you will, sitting at a panel table where you have kind of one of the, dare I say, grandfathers of the treatment-free beekeeping movement over the last 30 years at one side of the table, and at the other side of the table, at that time, that was Michael Bush at that side of the table. And on the other end of the spectrum, other end of the table, you have somebody who's keeping bees for a living, actual farming of bees, which is Ian Stepler. And then I brought somebody right in the middle road, right? And that was Mr. James Lee from Michigan, who is treatment-free kind of ish, is into breeding and moving genetics forward, but it also isn't afraid to nuke the mites out of certain colonies so they're not all goners. So anyways, that was a phenomenal opportunity. And I'm really excited to release that discussion, because I don't think that discussion like that has ever taken place. So it was an honor to be a part of that, and so many other things was so great. I got to give a special shout out to Mr. Mike Art and Travis Art. They were there in a big way for me to help me get my booth set up and torn down. Just before we were leaving to go, a couple of kids started to come down sick, and so there's no way in the world Mama's going to leave with sick kids. So Mama stayed back. I had Jake back doing things here, so I went at it alone. And so having Mike and Travis there to help me get the booth set up was super huge. So special shout out to those guys. They're awesome. And the last thing I just want to throw out there before I get blabbing even more is looking forward to going out to, there it is, yeah, Easy Ox. Fantastic stuff. We sell it here in the shop, and we've used it for years. It is a great product. Yep, there it is. Red, white, and blue. Love it. Speaking of red, white, and blue, coming up here at St. Louis, Missouri, the EMBA workshop. It's a one-day workshop with Bob Benny, Natalie Summers, Corey Stevens, Mr. Matucci, a local legend there. A lot of great vendors put on by Tom, Melissa Sosman, and their team there with the EMBA. Check that out. You can go to emba.com, or maybe we can find a link and drop it in here too. That is going to be a phenomenal learning opportunity, a one-day workshop in the St. Louis area coming up, just not this coming weekend, but the following. Susie and I, Susie was like, we should go on a romantic date somewhere. And I said, I think you're right. That's like a really nice dinner sound and maybe some good conversation. And she goes, yeah, I like it. Where should we go? And I said, how do you feel about St. Louis, Missouri, to the EMBA conference? And she looked over at me. Well, it was just one of those things. I charmed her into it. We're going to have a good time. Susie and I are going to get away for a nice romantic getaway, St. Louis, Missouri, talk about bees, sell some wax tipped equipment, and just fellowship with that community. So looking forward to seeing everybody there. I've heard the one and only Mr. J.W. Irwin is going to be in the kitchen, and he is actually making dinner, a special dinner Friday night. You guys ready for this? Possum foie gras, the likes of which have never been seen. I hear it's great. It's going to be huge. See what you did there, Brian? It's going to be great.
Did you say possum?
Possum
foie
gras with the side of raccoon fritters. It's going to be nice. You don't want to miss it.
Hey,
Greg, awesome.
Guess what the temperature is going to be on Friday? Just take a wild guess.
At your place?
Yes, Friday and Saturday down here.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I haven't even looked. If we're working bees, it's got to be at least 48 or 50. It's
not going to be like it was last week with snow. We got Friday. It's going to be a little bit rainy, maybe, and 73.
Just keep
what?
Saturday.
Is this 67. Fahrenheit or Celsius?
Hopefully it's not Celsius. Yeah,
that'd be pretty hot, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we got Saturday at 67. So tomorrow's going to be 71. So
what's it going to be? So 73 Friday. What's it going to be on Saturday?
67.
It's going to be a little rainy. That is like beautiful bee weather.
Yeah, a little bit of a chance of rain on Friday. So, but that's okay. We're not going to be at the bees on Friday. So
Brian, we're going to be cracking lids and getting stung and having a good time. Oh my gosh, that's going to be awesome. That's going to get me so pumped up.
Take the day off. Take some days off and come down, Brian. Hop on with Greg.
I wish.
We need somebody who's got a private airline that would let us put like a Stream Team logo on it. We just cruise around.
Well,
That'd
when
be
Queen
nice.
Right when Queen Right Dog gets big, that's going to be Brian and Jason.
Dial it in, guys. Dial it in.
See that right on like that I don't even know the names of private jets. What are they, like jet streams or something? Airstreams, whatever.
Yeah.
Have it dial it in right down the side of it.
Look at that.
Instead of Trump 2024 is going to have dial it in right there.
Right.
Dial it in. Guys,
let's
I am
dive
really
in.
looking forward to tonight's conversation. It gets hairy quick, and we're going to get into that. As we get going, if you have a comment or a question, please leave it in all caps, and Brian will be sure to catch that and star that so we can hopefully attend to it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If we don't get to call you out or read your comment, please do not take that personally. These comments fly by so quick, it's impossible for us to see every single one. If you do it in all caps, though, it kind of triggers us to be able to see it and then put that aside so we can get to that. So if you've got something to say, leave it in all caps, and we'll do our best to bring that in to the conversation. Let's get into it. Which one is better, nukes or packages? I'm just gonna come right out of the cut and say it like this. You know, you have some folks who say that packages are the epitome of everything that's wrong with this bee industry, and they are filthy, nasty bees with poorly mated queens, and they should never see a beekeeper's yard. And sometimes the people that say that are the folks who are trying to sell you a nuke, and so they've got a little bit of an agenda. And then you have some folks who say, why would you wait until June to buy a nuke when you could buy a package in March? You know, why would you want somebody else's overwintered last year, already dated, already old, ready to swarm queen who's already wore out and lost X amount of eggs? Why would you want that in an overwintered nuke? Don't you want something fresh from this year? And believe me, I can talk around both sides of this, no problem, very comfortably and very confidently, because I've seen the good and the bad and the ugly of both. And we're going to get into that tonight. Brian, you are just dying to say something.
Your Honor, can I enter Exhibit A into the argument?
Please.
Okay. This is going to be Exhibit A. Look at how happy that fella is.
Look at how happy that guy is.
Look at how happy that fella is.
Look at that. Would you look at that? Would you just look at that?
There, proof right there, Exhibit A.
You know, there's a lot to say about that, and we're going to maybe get into it. Maybe we'll more gently just kind of roll into this pros and cons kind of scenario. Before we do that, let's hear right from the experts here. Bruce, I know you've had some experience. Everybody has to start with bees somehow, right? There is a point of reference where you bring bees into your very first apiary, and that looks different for everybody. Bruce, can you talk to us about that catalyst? How did Bruce acquire your first bees to start your apiary?
Well, I got some nukes. I didn't have any idea what I was doing, but fortunately I got some good ones, and it made sense to me when I kind of learned what they were. I'm trying to figure out how to send a picture here too, and I'm goofing up. But anyway, it made sense to me that if you got all the parts of a beehive, of a colony of bees, when you get a nuke, you know, it made sense as a brand new beekeeper to have the brood, the bees, the queen, everything in there, along with, you know, just an established colony that's already kind of rocking and rolling and moving along. So I didn't know any better, and I thought that was the best option, and so that's what I did, and I had good success with that. I have never seen in real life a package of bees. I've sold I don't sell a lot of nukes, not yet. My goal is to sell more in the future. I've never sold a nuke. Obviously, I've never sold a package. Well, I have sold nukes. I've never sold a package, obviously, but you know, but there are so many different levels as time has gone on of different quality of nukes, there's so many, probably in both packages and nukes, you can have a lot of problems, but it really is just a matter of the quality. If you get a really good nuke with really good bees and really good queen from a reputable and honest beekeeper that's done the best to get it prepped the right way, I think it's a great way to get started.
Well, let's talk about that before we just go back and forth. let's talk a little bit about pros and cons of a nuke, because a lot of folks, I think, are of the mindset. Let me preface this and say a lot of folks repeat what they heard, or they repeat what they learned at the bee club, or they repeat whatever the thing was that the person who sold them the bees said. And we all have a point of reference. You all have to start somewhere. But at some point, you gain experience. And then through that experience, you gain wisdom. Let's talk a little bit about pros and cons. So here we go. In the comments, if you think that nukes are better than packages, just leave in all caps, just say nuke. And let's get some kind of a feel in the comments here.
Like a vote.
Is there
a way to vote on this, Brian, where you can actually vote, or do you just kind of have to?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a poll you can do where people can take a vote.
Greg, I think you can on your end. I don't think
that's beyond my ability here.
In the YouTube thing, I think you can.
Oh, it's all right. Yeah, it might be too much to try and handle while we're
in the comments. So in the comments, leave it, and then if you're listening to this on the replay, leave it in the comments and put nukes are better or packages are better. And I'm really curious to be able to go down and through and read all the comments to kind of get a feel for that. Let's break it down before we go to Brian. Bruce, let's break this down as far as a nuke. Why would you guys think that a nuke is a, now context is key, right? Let's talk about a beginning beekeeper. Let's talk about a beekeeper who is just getting started. There's Bruce.
That right there. Hey, go back. Yeah, I've seen
the
3
Genesis
pictures. There they are. That was me. So kind of to backtrack just a little bit, I went to who became my mentor. I found out about him, and that's kind of a long story short I'm going to tell here, so I'm not going to tell much about that. But that day I remember he had put these were some homemade boxes that he had made out of lumber that he had milled, and he painted them. He made the boxes. He's kind of an old scrappy guy, and he put the nukes of bees in these hives right here, walked them across the driveway right there. You've seen this very spot in my videos. Set them on the hive stand right near where the horizontal hive is now at the farm, and set on the stands. And man, I was so stoked. I was so thrilled. I had to borrow that bee jacket. I didn't even have a bee jacket yet, so that's kind of,
that's so nice.
Yeah, it was. I borrowed that from a friend, and I got mine in the mail not long after that. But so, what was the question again, Greg? What were you asking me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think the pros are of going with a nuke? What are some of the pros of going with a nuke if you're a beginning beekeeper?
Well, I just feel like, to me, you get somewhat of a head start because you have drawn comb in there. The bees already have brood. If it's a good young queen, she's already established, and you just have all the stuff. You know, assuming it's a good nuke, you have everything you need. You've got all the resources. It's just like a mini colony of bees, and so it's just if you got plenty of brood in there, you have potential for it to explode very quickly, and you know, make you some honey pretty quickly if you're in a good spot for that. So, in my opinion, and I've never dealt with packages, so I don't know that much about them. I feel like you get a pretty good head start. If you know, it's more expensive. That's a negative, but the packages. But to me, it's a good opportunity to have a little bit of a head start. That's probably the primary benefit, I would say. And if you want to grow quickly, if you start with bees that are already on comb, that have drawn comb, and they're ready to go, you know, you can grow more quickly that way. You can split sooner and so forth. And understand, folks, we're talking about just getting started with bees. Obviously, you can buy nukes or packages if you already have bees, if you want to really expand quickly. But for new beekeepers, you got to start somewhere. And so I noticed too, Greg, in the comments, people putting swarms in there, and that's another option for some people. But that's not really the conversation we're having. I don't know. That's just my thoughts, Greg.
All right. Well, let's get into that just a little bit. So nukes getting started. We're assuming an awful lot. We're assuming that the nuke is actually a split off the beekeeper's colonies, and that the queen that is in this is a freshly mated queen from that year. I think if you're in a scenario where you're getting a split from somebody else's bees that are in your local area that have a queen that they made that is that year queen, I think that is a nice package. That's a nice setup for somebody to get started. but that's also assuming an awful lot. Now, if you think about this, Nukes splits are made locally nearly during swarm season. It is that spring buildup where there's pollen, where there's nectar, where you can make those queens, where there are drones. Now, to do that, when that nuke is available as a spring split, you've already lost your spring. That nuke is actually available at the very end of spring, going into the first part of summer. You'd have just missed having a colony actually big enough to do much with that early flow. So now what they're doing is growing and growing and growing to hopefully be large enough and be big enough to maybe capture a fall crop of honey. And the idea is that nuke is going to be big enough to overwinter. Now, most of the time, nukes don't necessarily make you a lot of honey just because of the timing. By the time you actually get that nuke, here in Ohio, for instance, it's late May, early June in my neck of the woods before nukes are actually let loose. Those are nukes that we made. Those are queens from our own stock that we grafted, that were mated here. Those aren't ready until the weather permits. That's going to be late May, early June at the very earliest. Okay, for folks who are just going beekeeping, hey, when it's March and the grass is green and the dandelions are blooming and the birds are chirping and it starts to smell like that beautiful earthy spring smell, and you look around and you've got your hive kit and everything set up, and you see everybody on Facebook posting all their beautiful photos of them with their bees, and you're sitting there waiting until the 1st of June. Like, a lot of folks have trouble with that. And we have a lot of folks who buy nukes who they'll call and say, hey, is there any chance we can get a package and we really want to get started? Now, I should have said this up front and I didn't. Context is crucial and it is key. We sell both. We sell both packages and nukes. So what I am sharing with you are the pros and cons, the dirty of both. Okay. So what Bruce said, I think is great. For a beginning beekeeper who has a quality nuke that is made from that beekeeper, that's going to be available in that late spring to early summer time period, I think it helps take away some of the risk that packages can pose. But one of the big challenges go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, a couple of comments are real good in here, and I tend to agree with them. One from Tom, and some other people may be saying the same thing. And this is true. Tom says all nukes are not created equal. An overwintered nuke with a late previous season queen can be great. And then Clade from out in Utah says a nuke with a late summer overwintered queen, it will explode in the spring. And that's been my experience with a lot of the queens I've had. If it's a strong queen from the previous year, now they'll fizzle out sooner, of course, because they're, less than a year old, hopefully. But, if they overwinter, then obviously they're kind of further on their life span. But what I've noticed is a lot of my bees, they may even not really grow that strong that first year, but for whatever reason, that second spring, they just tend to really explode. And so I think that is an option. It doesn't have to be necessarily from that year. And so that can give you a head start. This is just an argument, a devil's advocate argument here that if it's a really good, nice nuke that's been overwintered, that's just ready to explode, that can really be an early season thing that you can get in a lot of areas. I don't know down here, if you can get early nukes like that, they will really just blow up and they can make you honey that first year. The new nukes that you create with newly mated queens, I think you're absolutely correct on that, because it's tough to get a lot of queens right here in Alabama where I'm at, to get a lot of queens grafted, mated in a nuke and brand new queens, and then build up to make honey, because our honey flow is over by mid to late June. And so, it's hard to do that. But if you've got an overwintered nuke or you get a mated queen, if you can get a hold of a mated queen early in the spring, and it's from a reputable source, of course, you can have some nukes that blow up. I had some last year that I made nukes, early season splits that I got, I think, 1 to 2 boxes of honey off of some of them, and even made a second split on them before that. And so it is possible down here anyway. Does that make sense? I hope, but it's got to be quality.
It does. And let's quickly talk about that, because nukes are not created equal. And we're going to get into some of the scams. We're going to talk about some of the dirty dealings when it comes to nukes. But one of the big things that beginning beekeepers they're not aware of is they just hear the word nuke, right? And so they Google it and they look at their state, Ohio nuke for sale, right? And so they think that that's the direction that they want to go, and they maybe find somebody's webpage, or they find some person who is selling a nuke, and they go into vague land of what the nuke actually is, and then magically this nuke is available in April, or it might even be ready in March, and it may not even say overwintered, right? One of the things that is common in a lot of northern climates is they are nukes that are coming from Timbuktu, and they're coming up to Ohio, and the folks have no idea what it actually is. They think they're getting local bees that have, no matter what your opinion is, if local matters, no matter what that is, there is an educational barrier with that first-time buyer, with that beginning beekeeper. They don't know the right questions to ask. They don't know what it is that they really want, and they don't even know what they're getting. But one of the things that you'll find is that our folks are selling, if nukes are available at the same time as packages, you have got to ask some questions, and you have to know the right questions to ask, right? Is that truly an overwintered nuke? And if so, where was it overwintered? Was it overwintered in Georgia, or was it overwintered in Ohio, right? Those are really important questions, because if people, typically, the idea of buying nukes is you are buying local genetics. By and large, when people are looking at nukes, they think they want bees that are made right there in their home state, right there in their local area. And that's a hard thing to fully understand. So that's a big deal. If those nukes are available in March and April at the same time that packaged bees are being brought up, you've got to ask the question, where do these bees come from, and did you raise them? If that is an important thing for you to know. A lot of times you'll find they're not. They were literally brought from west, or they were brought up from down south when the season was warm enough to actually do that. It's a really, really important question. The other thing to consider, an overwintered nuke. Do you really want an overwintered nuke? And do you know what an overwintered nuke actually is? By the time folks are getting overwintered nukes in Ohio, if you're buying an overwintered nuke in April, the only thing that saw winter was the queen, right? But if you're buying an overwintered nuke at the end of February or the first part of March or going into March, right, and it's an overwintered nuke, right, there may be some workers barely hanging on that actually saw the wintertime. The queen did, right? And what do you really want with a queen? Do you want a last year? Do you really want a last year's queen? Because what a last year's queen was if it was a queen that was made during the swarm season, during the spring, going into the first part of summer, you now have a queen that is fully mature and ready to swarm again, hot and heavy this spring. Is that really what you want? Is a queen who is ready to, who is in her prime swarm mode? Now, if that queen overwintered and was a solstice queen, however, that's a horse of a different color. Now you're getting into a queen who is just coming into her fullness on that next spring flow, and they have a tendency of staying put a little bit better and not swarming. These are things nobody talks about and not a lot of folks know about.
That's why it's important to kind of, and it's difficult in all this, whether it's packages or nukes. Can you trust the person you're talking to?
Right.
Another thing I think with new beekeepers, which is kind of where we may be talking here, is do they even know to ask the questions? What questions to even ask? I mean, so there's a comment from Highland Honey, I think, here that was this is a critical lesson learned. So they bought 2 nukes, wasn't allowed to inspect, got home to find 3 broken frames, approximately 1 cup of bees for $225. Then down a little bit lower, he said that was his first experience with nukes.
Yeah.
So I will tell you this, and I haven't bought a lot of nukes because I got my first few. I have bought a few from my friend Rusty, and I just pretty much have made my own bees, or I bought quite a few queens, but I've mostly made my own splits. I've caught swarms, and I've kind of increased my own bees, sometimes utilizing other people's queens, but I've pretty much made my own splits really from the start, except for just a very few. I bought my first 4 nukes and immediately in 10 frame in the spring when they went right into 10 frame boxes, and they did well. And so 95% of my growth has been from splits that I've made myself. However, that you hear the horror stories of people. There's probably more people in this column right here that have bought bees from other people, whether it be, particularly, I think it is an issue with the nuke industry, is that you can buy bees from someone that are just riddled with mites, or they aren't what they say they are. That if someone tells you you can't inspect them, then that's a red flag. Run away as fast as you can, because you need to be able to go. I mean, you need to be able to look in those bees and say, hey, this is what I'm getting. If you open up a nuke box, and there's just like one frame, you see a few bees on the top, and it's just a weak nuke, you need to be able to pull some. You don't need to buy it. You need to be able to pull out some brood. You need to look at the health of the colony. You just look at it and see what you're getting. And even still, you don't always know, Greg, to your point with the queen, unless you know the questions to ask, and the person, unless you know the risk you're taking, you don't know. But another issue, and I'll say this, and this is going to sound a little strange, but, and I know Cayman has talked about this. I've seen him when he's breaking out nukes, and then my friend down here, Tyler, that makes nukes, he's told me, if you get a nuke that is too strong, like if you get a nuke that's got 4 frames of brood in there and a frame of food that's just loaded up with bees, there's no room for the bee, you can't see the tops of the bars at all. You get that thing, you better get it in a box right away, or they're going to be in swarm mode. They've got to have a little room for growth. So you got to kind of know what to look for. And that, I think, is a tricky thing when you're a new beekeeper. You just really don't know. I was fortunate in my case, because the guy I got the bees from, he became my mentor, and I think I drove him crazy because I asked all kinds of crazy questions, and I just was very, very, I want to use the word, I was innocent, honestly. At the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing, and he really helped. He was patient with me when I was determined to do things the wrong way, and he helped me. But if I wouldn't have had someone like that to guide me, there's no telling what I could have ended up with. I know people right here locally that have bought nukes from people that just don't believe you need to treat for mites, and they buy these nukes, and they look maybe decent when they get them, and they're just loaded up with mites. The nukes just die almost immediately. They die, fizzle out. They never do anything. So you have to be able to know the questions to ask. You have to be able to look at those bees, and you have to make sure that it's someone you trust. And if you do that, even if it, like in my case, like to Tom and to Tom's point and Glade's point, if I would know the questions to ask. Like if I were getting a nuke from you, Greg, I would ask, well, how old is this queen? And you would say, well, we split her off last spring and she's been overwintered. I'd be like, well, then I know what I'm getting. It's a year-old queen. I got it.
What exactly is this nuke?
You have to know what you're getting. And you have to know the questions to ask. And that can be very difficult if you're trying to do it yourself. Fortunately, I think a lot of people are honest. They do a good job with their nuke sales. But there are a lot of, you got to be careful.
There is a lot going on to that. And the one thing I just want to quickly go back on, because it would be disingenuous of me to let some of the things that you said go without me speaking to it briefly, is a lot of folks are under the impression that they are not going to go buy a nuke unless they can go look at it. And I'm going to be the first one to say, if you want to schedule a time to come and look at a nuke, we can do that. But it's a matter of scale too. Like when we have 75 or 100 nukes that are leaving that day, right? Those are actually closed up the night before. We keep them in the dark and we keep them in the shade, so that when you leave, you actually have the full field force and young bees in that nuke to go down the road, right? You're not going to come to this bee yard on a Saturday nuke pickup and want to go dig through 20 or 25 nukes before you take them home. If you did do that, you're going to lose all your field force.
That's true.
They're going to be out working, and you're going to have nothing but young bees in there. And from a business standpoint, I can't go through 25 nukes with you, pull at every frame, and you see every. Now, if that is a prerequisite, and that is something that you want to do, let's talk about that, right? And let's find a different day during the week, or not on a nuke pickup day, where we can try to accommodate that, right? The main thing is you have to trust the beekeeper, and you have to ask around, and more important, see what everybody else says about them. That's the main thing.
Greg, what do you think about? So I guess my question would be, in a case like this, and now that you mentioned this, I do know people like my buddy that sells a lot of nukes every year, that he may load up a big truck with hundreds of nukes on it and take it somewhere to Birmingham or off somewhere else, even maybe another state.
Yep.
So obviously the person, if he's selling them to to a broker, so to speak, he can't. I mean, they can't go through all the nukes. They just can't do that. So what is your, like in your case, Greg, or what would you recommend to people in a case like that? Like if they're coming to your Nature's Image farm to get nukes, is there like a guarantee? Is there like how do you make it good if they take that nuke home and they ended up with one that was weak, or how do you make sure that you have customer satisfaction in that case?
Yeah. Number one, you've got to be able to trust the beekeeper, and you have to be able to hear from other folks that what they've gotten in years past was actually good. Now, how we make our nukes are going to be different maybe than somebody else. What we don't do is we typically don't make the splits into nuke boxes and then grow them out in nuke boxes, right? What we do is we will tend to run full size singles, right? And then the night before, the day before nuke pickup, right? Or 2 days before, we will go through and then start to actually cherry pick the best of that single. Those go into the transport box. Those get closed up. Those go into the shade, into the dark for the next day's pickup. That is how we do a lot of that. Now, sometimes we'll make splits, or let's say we had a bunch of 5-frame queen mating nukes that have just gotten really big and really fat. Those can go out as nukes, no problem. But for the most part, I prefer to cherry pick out of a 10-frame single. That way I'm getting everything. I am getting the perfect food format frame, brood frame, some to grow on. I can see everything right then and there. The problem you have to watch out for, if you're buying nukes from somebody who's raising them in nuke boxes, what are the chances that you're actually getting 4 or 5 top-notch frames if there's only 4 to 5 frames in the box? All you're getting is whatever the bees are producing, and that may be might not be the cherry-picked frames that you actually want. When a nuke goes down the road here, it's a nuke that looks so good, I don't want to see it leave. Right? I want it. I've got to be so proud of it that I would buy it myself and I would put it in my own yard. Now, folks know us, right? Any questions that they have, any concerns that they have, right? They can call, they can email if they have any kind of performance issues. And hey, things happen, right? 100% things happen. We can pull a nuke out of a box where there is all stages of larvae. Everything is beautiful. Everything is golden, right? And they can go into a box, and in the act of somebody pulling those frames out and putting them into their own boxes, things happen. Queens get rolled. Anything in the world is possible. What we always do is we always make sure to stand behind our nukes and say, hey, if you have any problems at all, call me immediately and let's get this taken care of, because you don't want your bees to be set back. We've got to keep moving forward. So we take care of our folks no matter what. But you got to have a clear line of communication. You have to know what the nuke actually is. And you also, as a beginning beekeeper, you have to know, well, what really is it that I want? And then ask those questions, because all nukes are not created equal. One of the biggest scams going.
That's true.
I'm not going to throw this culture or this group of pretty solid people under the bus here, but let's just say they're folks of antiquity. One of the biggest scams that some of those folks of antiquity do is they will buy 1 or 2 semi-loads of bees right off the almonds. They'll bring them into this pristine environment where everything is wholesome. They'll bring these bees right off the almonds, and they'll also bring enough queens right from California in the 3-hole Denton cage. They will split all of the bees off the almond truck into jester boxes, and they're not looking for queens. They're taking that caged queen and they're putting it inside of the box. They're closing it, they're taping it, and they're telling the customer, for the queen's safety, we've caged her. Whatever you do, don't interrupt this nuke for 7 to 10 days. What they just did is they just broke out splits off a truck, put a mated queen in a cage inside of that box, taped it up. They pulled the cork off the candy side, and now they're letting this whole thing happen and unfold, right? What it is packaged bees on comb sold inside of a nuke at a premium, because the new beginning beekeeper think they're going to this beautiful, pristine place of antiquity, right? Where there's no electric and they're doing things just so wholesome. Guys, you got to be careful. You have to know what it is that you want. Now, I'll say this. Is that a nucleus colony. In that scenario, that would be hard to justify and validate that as a nucleus colony if we understand a nucleus colony is a nucleus of a greater whole. And in my mind, that is a queen and brood and eggs and food. That is a definition of nuke. Now, what more do you want out of this nuke? Do you want that local? Do you want genetics from the beekeeper? Do you actually want overwintered? Do you want an old queen? Do you want old, nasty, rundown, let's get rid of it equipment inside of your box? All of those things and more happen. And unfortunately, the beginning beekeeper doesn't know the right questions to ask. There are beautiful nukes and there are 100% garbage nukes. And there's a lot to all that.
Greg, let's take a minute and recognize all the folks in this chat, man. We got 180 folks in here tonight. That's a great crowd. That's a great crowd tonight. So we appreciate everyone being on here.
Fired up.
No, I think it's you, Greg.
This is something that's hard not to get passionate about because we mentor so many folks. We sell both packages and nukes. And this is the time of year all over Facebook, right? Where the person selling packages puts a post up on packages and everyone selling nukes freaks out and leaves comments. Oh, you shouldn't buy a package. You should buy a nuke. And by the way, I sell nukes. And then it goes vice versa. You goes the person who sells nukes, it will make these posts and try to get business. And that's awesome. But then you've got the person who only sells packages says, well, I don't know why you'd wait that long to get a nuke, or all nukes are garbage. You should buy a pack. So that's why tonight we're going to take the time to get into the weeds and talk about both sides of each to hopefully paint a more accurate, clear picture of what a nuke is and what a package is. I think we've pretty much nailed the nuke part. Let's maybe talk about packages and then we'll start going through all the comments. So Bruce, you started with packages that were really inside of singles and you got them going and you started off and you had a good experience, right?
It was nukes. I mean, yes, I did. And they had gone from a 5-frame into my mentor put them into a 10-frame box and had them ready for me when I got there. So they were 5-frame nukes. He told me to kind of just leave them alone for a week or two and then go in, and they just took off, and I'm glad they did. It really got me excited about beekeeping, and he did me good. He did a good job with those.
I like that. One of the things that we do here is we sell hive kits with bees. So it'll have a nuke already installed in it, in a single, ready to go. So when the folks, they pick it up, they take it home, they open it up, and it's ready to go. And it takes a lot of that. Some people have stress and anxiety over those first few steps. Something like that really helps to take that out. Tom Sosman, long story long tonight. Tom, you have no idea. This one could get hairy. So Jason Egan says, I purchased 2 nukes from the same place last year. One was great, the other a dud. It took until July to get the problem solved. They reimbursed me after weeks, but I would rather had bees. You know what? That's true. Sometimes things happen, and it's not necessarily where you got the bees fault. Sometimes it is. But when a nuke goes out the door here, it's leaving a 10-frame single that has done so well, it's filled a 10-frame single. So I'm pulling the nuke out. The heart of that colony goes home to somebody else. We drop a cell, or we've got a virgin queen. We now move the existing box forward, but folks are getting the cherry-picked best part out of it. But sometimes anything in the world can happen. But working with somebody who has integrity, who has a clear line of communication, that wants to see you do well, who actually does this and isn't just flipping bees to make some side money as a side hustle. Work with somebody who raises bees for a living, or who has raised enough bees to be able to help you when things go wrong, or they actually know how these bees are raised and do it well. I'm going to leave that alone for now. But Brian, you've had the opposite experience with nukes. Can you talk to us about nukes versus packages when it comes to the mighty Brian Coper?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'll tell you, I think it was my second year, and I figured, well, I started out with packages. My experience there was wonderful. Absolutely no complaints. But I forget whether I got 1 or 2. I was just small. This would have been probably 2018. And when I went down, didn't know the person. I just went from, on the interwebs, and went down and told the guy I was a new beekeeper and blah, 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 and wanted to try out a nuke, and, didn't have any clue as far as questions. And I saw a lot of comments in there, didn't know the right questions to ask, things like that. And the guy, when I was telling him my experience, he walked me straight out into, it would almost been like I was at your place, Greg, where you've got the rows on each side of the bees. And he's like, oh, tell me about their temperament. And I'm standing there in this cloud of bees, just like a kid in the greatest candy store known to mankind. I'm just looking around like, wow, this is fantastic. And from that point on, I didn't ask a single question. I was just like, this is going to be me. This is great, and salesman, and when I got home, they probably filled 2.5 or so frames. Like, it was very small and never really developed. And I was pulling brood frames out of my other colonies because I had split my one to put into the nuke to try and boost it. And the queen ended up failing, and I just combined it with my hives I already had. And I was just like, this is a waste.
Yeah.
But now I had no clue. Partially, I can't entirely blame the individual because I didn't know what questions to ask. I was totally clueless. Now the size of the nuke, I could honestly say, I'm like, well, this person probably did me wrong just because it was small, and you shouldn't really get a nuke home, and it doesn't barely even fill 2.5 frames. It's like, come on, so my experience was lousy, just lousy. So, and from that point on, I never have bought another nuke. Now, if I were to purchase a nuke now, well, I know what questions to ask, but I also know a joker that sells them. And like, I saw a number of individuals in the comments say, know your beekeeper.
Yep.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a lot of important things that you mentioned there is, some of the nuke failure happens, right? It can be for a lot of reasons. But I think a lot of it has to do nuke failure, by and large, I think a lot of that does go back to whoever actually built the nuke or wherever the nuke came from. But there are some times where nuke failure is actually that new beginning beekeeper's problem. And a lot of beekeepers who are selling the nuke, a lot of times they mean well, they have good intentions, and they want to see somebody go down the road with something really fat, right? Really happy. But I know a very well-respected beekeeper who sent some nukes down the road, and by the time that they got 6 hours down the road, everything in the boxes were dead because this person made the nukes too hot. They made them too big. There wasn't enough ventilation in the boxes, and then the person who took these nukes home, they weren't educated on what to do. Right? You shouldn't be stopping at Rural King for free popcorn and coffee with nukes in the back and your hatchback Honda Civic. You probably shouldn't be doing that. Matter of fact, you don't do that. We always joke around and say, husbands, I know you were really wanting to take your wife out to a nice lunch today, to tell her thank you for letting you buy nukes of bees, but you got to get these home, and you at least got to get them in the shade or get them in their boxes, right? A couple of the fail points on nukes, outside of them being diseased to begin with, outside of them being old, nasty black comb full of bees with viruses, outside of the bait and switch and dropping queens in cages inside of a nuke and saying don't touch them for 7 to 10 days, outside of you buying a nuke and not knowing whatever in the world that it is, thinking you're getting locally adapted queens that were bred by the individual. Outside of all of that, sometimes things get by the beekeeper who is selling the nuke. One of those things are the bees and the frames are just so jamming and full of bees that maybe they didn't see a queen cell or two that were hidden on the side. That 100% happens. And it happens more often than you think. The other thing, and what happens in that scenario, right? Within a week or so, right? You might have a cell that's now being capped, and another week she's hatching, and all of a sudden that nuke is swarming, right? That can be the beekeepers, the original, the nuke suppliers. That can be their problem. But sometimes the first beginning beekeeper who is buying the nuke and bringing them home, they're not going through the frames. They're not looking at what they just barely put it into the box, or they leave it in the transport box for a week, right? Because the magic doohickey thing that they were going to buy off Amazon, who they were just convinced they absolutely needed to have before they can start their beekeeping experience, and it didn't come, and now it's late, and now they're afraid to get in there and work those bees or open them up. Now guess what? Now it's been 2 weeks, and all of a sudden 16 days later, here comes a virgin hatching out of there, and the whole thing swarmed. I have gotten calls, right? 3 weeks after somebody has bought a nuke, and they say, what's wrong with these bees? They just swarmed, or they're all in a tree. And I say, okay, well, run me through the scenario. Like, let's go back to day one. What happened? Well, I got them home and I ran short on time, so I stocked them, and I did this, and then I said, but you put them into your regular box, right? Well, no, I left them in there, right? And it's been 3 and 4 weeks later. Like, guys, you can't do that. Like, it's a transport box. Like, we gave you a list of things to do, things to look out for, checklist. Like, we gave you the correct information when you left. We answered all of your questions, but sometimes things happen and people forget. And this is a new experience. And so for some folks, that can lead to anxiety and fear, and all these new thoughts and new ideas and things can happen. So this is why it's important to be a good communicator, to be able to understand where people are at, meet them where they're at, right? And you know, one of the big reasons why people don't like selling bees is they don't like talking with people. They don't like communicating, and they don't like fielding every harebrained question. You really have to be a good communicator and want to see people do well to sell bees. If not, you will find out really quickly that with all of the questions, as mundane or trivial as they may seem, you have to meet people where they're at. Our goal is to make sure that folks who buy their bees with us, that they have the best year ever. They have a tremendous experience. No matter what skill set or experience that they have, we want to see folks do well. And we want to sell bees the first year. And then that second year, we want to be selling people equipment because they're making splits, right? But that's where what we do is a little bit different. We want to be able to be there for them. We have the learning yard just for that, so we can guide people through their entire first year. They can learn hands-on right here at the farm. That's a big deal, but that is not everyone's experience. And I'm not saying if you don't do it our way, the way that we have found that works for us, that somehow you're a dirty dog. But I am saying that new beginning beekeeper, you've got to be able to trust the person you're working with, and you have to be able to communicate. And that's not easy for everybody to do. Brian, you got hosed. You had some nukes that didn't go well. Believe it or not, I've gotten hosed on nukes. I've bought nukes from a allegedly very reputable. Well, I just don't want to get into that because I'm not the guy to sling mud. But let's just say this. I bought nukes that off, and the only reason I bought these nukes is there was somebody on our local Ohio beekeepers page who was really proud of their genetics and touting that these were treatment-free, that they had never been treated, and that these were very hygienic bees. And I thought, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. Let's go after it. Brought some of those back, brought them back to the farm, and that was horrific. Those bees were sick. Those bees didn't even make it until Christmas time, and that was not a good move, right? Not all nukes are created equal, but also not all nuke suppliers are operating with the same amount of integrity either. So there's that. Brian, with your nuke scenario, do you ever foresee having a need for you personally to bring a nuke in to your apiary?
Like right now, what I do anymore is, and I've done it again for this year. I have some packages that are ordered just to replenish numbers, but my scenario is not a brand new beekeeper.
Right.
Typically, and I know we'll talk about packages here in a little bit. I'll leave that portion of my answer for that point in the discussion, but I don't know. Like right now, how I feel, I could say, well, probably not. The only one that I would, I mean, maybe if I was tinkering with something, maybe I would just to tinker. But I don't know that I would just, if I were to want to establish another colony, I don't think I would.
Yeah. When folks call and they say, what should I get? I say, well, what are your goals? We want to have bees. We want to get started. Then you've got follow-up questions. Okay, well, how soon do you want to get started? When it smells like spring, like, are you the kind of person who you're going to be itchy and you got to get started right away? And if the answer is yes, that's when I typically will lean and say, well, let's talk about a package. You know, what kind of, are you adverse to risk? Right, there is a little more risk installing a package, getting them going. There's a few more detailed steps in place that you've got to follow. You've got to do right for this to be successful. Are you willing to do all these things? And if the answer is yes, then hey, maybe a package is actually better for you. Now, what we see with packages is packages installed in Ohio, in our neck of the woods, East Central Ohio. When packages are installed in late March or April, it is very rare if those packages do not have a late spring or summer honey crop. They have had enough brood cycle and enough growth where if the weather does cooperate, and if the beekeeper is feeding correctly leading up to that brood stage where there's a field force, a lot of times those packages will 100% make honey. Matter of fact, I've got a beekeeper friend who every year laughs and tells me how many buckets of honey his package bees created. And it's very rare if a package for him doesn't create 3/4, if not a full 5-gallon bucket of honey on those early packages. It's a dynamic, it's a time game, right? Those things do matter. So for the folks who want the early start, for folks who want to see this entire experience unfold, it's very, some folks will call, old timers will call and say they want to buy a swarm of bees. And I say, wait, you want to buy a swarm of bees? Yeah, a swarm package. Like they used to be called swarm packages. And that's what they were, right? It was 2 to 4 pounds of loose bees in the cage with a queen, right? It's not that different than a swarm for a lot of reasons. There are some differences, but mechanically speaking, they're a lot closer related than you think. So for that beginning beekeeper, you know, I think swarms. See, I said it. I think that the packages do make sense. We can definitely talk about swarms at the end of this, but that's a whole separate conversation.
Like my thought is, and it helped me where I started out, and I didn't have a mentor with me really at all. I had to go by what I was visually seeing, and I had to react to what I was seeing.
Yeah.
So had I had a nuke as a brand new beekeeper, not having a mentor, not knowing what I was looking at, a nuke would have it probably, a no pun here, no whatever, it would have exploded.
Yeah.
Nuke would have exploded, and I would not have had any clue on how to react. Now, when I got the packages and I put them in on the foundation every week when I was checking it, I made sure I saw the development. I saw, you know, the eggs being laid. I saw how that colony built out. So it was a great learning experience as a brand new beekeeper to see the full development from installation and to see that colony flourish and produce honey. I did get honey the first year. So I would honestly say that's typically what I suggest. But every every situation is different. If you have a good mentor, like when Bruce started, he had a good mentor. Absolutely. I mean, could you get a nuke? Because, well, you could easily pick up the phone and say, hey, Bruce, I'm in checking the bees and I'm seeing this. Well, okay, I'll be over and let's go through it. So a new person with a mentor, definitely, yeah, you can get the nuke, but each situation is different. Now, like anymore, when I get packages where I say my situation is different, I have drawn comb. So when I install my packages, they are getting installed onto drawn comb. And I've seen, like I told you, when I've installed my packages, I've gone back. Typically, when I install them, I'll just 5, 6 or so days later go just to make sure the queen's out. I have gone in and found eggs after 5 and 6 days. So it's like, how can you go wrong with that?
Right.
And that's in April. So when you install these packages in April and already you have eggs, your second week of April, third week of April, and think then you've got 3 weeks, I'm just looking at 3-week cycles. How many 3-week cycles then until you would get a nuke come whatever it is? And if the weather's bad, if you end up with a little time frame where the weather's bad and the nuke supplier says, hey, time out, let's just let things ride another week or 2 weeks to make sure that Mother Nature is cooperating, that package is still growing.
It's still cruising. It's a very valid point, and it's something a lot of folks don't really think about because they haven't had the experience. They don't know the questions to ask. But the thing I do like about packages is you're not getting any diseased brood. You're not getting any old questionable comb, and you're not getting any brood that could be laden with mites. Is there problems with package bees? For sure. And a lot of folks, I don't even think understand how package bees come to an existence. But one of the most basic practices for shaking packages is going into singles or doubles, checking for the queen, hopefully, pulling out those brood frames, laying them next to the colony, and then there's a shaker box and a funnel. And those frames are literally they go out, they go over to the funnel, and they shake, and they go down into a screened shaker box down below. Now, sometimes those get shaken right into a 3-pound package. Other times they go into a shaker box where it holds more than 3 pounds, right? But the idea is, you are getting a mixture of age ranges of bees, right? And depending on where in the box it was shook, you could end up with more drones. Sometimes there's no drones in those packages. Sometimes you maybe have older field force, or you're maybe leaning more on the young side. You don't know. You can't control that. They're literally being shaken into a cage and then going down the road. They can't control that. Now, even though they may have found a queen, here's the thing where that sometimes drives me crazy with folks who have bad things to say about packages. They don't fully understand how packages are even put together, and they don't understand why the risk is actually there. And some of the things I don't know that we can necessarily outline, but in short, when they do find a queen, that doesn't mean that there's not a virgin running around somewhere already on those frames as well, and the virgin is getting shaken into a package. When that virgin or a mated queen, if they missed her, is shook into that package, right? They'll usually will put a cap on top. They'll take it back. They'll then put the mated queen, hopefully mated queen, that's in a cage on a tether inside, and then put the can of feed inside of there. In that scenario, it does happen. You can have a virgin queen running around in the actual package from when she was shook off of a frame, right? And then you could have a mated queen that's being tethered inside of there as well. You can have 2 queens. Sometimes, rather than that being a virgin queen, it can be a mated queen that got shook out that is in there, right? And then you can have supersedure issues, right? You can take a look and say, oh, okay, that the queen in that cage is dead. Why? Automatically you think, well, it's a rejection issue. Or the typical thing that drives me crazy is oh, it's a virgin queen in that cage, or it's a young, small queen in that cage, and that's why they rejected and they killed her through the screen. And yes, some of those things do happen, but a lot of times I think it's other things that are going on. Maybe there was a virgin running around in the cage. Maybe there was a mated queen running around in the cage. Here's one thing I'm going to throw out there, though. It is my opinion, and we have seen enough packages and have had enough conversations with customers and actual producers. For those of us who make splits, right, we don't have to wait 24 hours before we introduce a queen cell. We don't have to wait 36 hours before we introduce a new queen to a split. Something happens very quickly inside of that colony where when you remove a queen from a colony of bees, how long do you think it takes for those bees to recognize mama's not home? Right? Bruce, how long do you think it takes those bees to recognize that? That was a really good answer, but it was muted.
How do you know it was good then?
I could see it in your face, Bruce.
I mean, it happens really fast. I've never timed it, but it's got to be within just a couple of minutes. You know, you'll hear them roaring. You can tell. They can tell.
Brian, what about you? How long do you think it really takes the colony to recognize mama's not home? We have a problem.
Oh, it's fast.
It's fast.
Like, it's fast, yeah, because you're the one actually that when I was at
blame it on me.
Exactly. It's all your fault. When very first time I came down and you had your bees all over by no, they weren't at your place. They were right up the street.
Okay, one of the other yards.
Old place. Yeah. Yep. So we were going through and we were looking at boxes and you had the 5/5s, took the top box off and set it there, and you were like, okay, which box is the queen in? And I'm like, I don't know. You know, when you're sitting there just for a little bit and you're like, okay, well, you go through that box because she's in there. And I'm like, what are you, some kind of magician? You know? And sure enough, because you could look right at those two different boxes and tell which box was still happy because mama was in it, and which box, you know, mama took off. So they were like, uh-oh, we're going to run crazy now. Yeah.
You learn to cue in on those things and know quickly because, you know, Bruce is operating a scale like when you're operating 50, 75, 100, 200, 1,000 colonies, you're making very quick decisions based on the intelligence that you have right in front of you, right then and there. And it might be a 5 to 10 second look inside of a colony that tells you, for the most part, what is going on inside of there. You're executing and you're moving on to the next one. So it doesn't take very long. Here's what I think happens. A lot of times you'll hear folks will say packages are terrible because they're young queens that haven't developed enough pheromone. They're not voluptuous enough. And all those things can happen. Anybody, whether you buy a mated queen and have it shipped to you, whether you buy a nuke or whether you buy a package, you could have a very young queen in there. You could have a queen who literally just started laying eggs, right? And she is not developed into her fullness. But the big argument on the size of queen, what a lot of folks who haven't spent a lot of times with the different age ranges of queen, what they don't recognize is it can sometimes take 30 to 45 to 60 days for that queen to actually come into her fullness and that full voluptuous size. There's a transformation that happens. And right around 21 days, you really got something. But there's a difference between 21 days and even 45 days. When you get into 45, that queen has more of this gator tail kind of thing going, right? And she moves. She has this certain sway and swagger on the frames that even a 21 day queen doesn't have. As that queen matures and develops, gets her feet underneath of her, the queen quality also, I think, improves too, because you know what you're looking at. But here's what I think really happens. And I've never heard anybody talk about this. But if you take, in that scenario that Brian just talked about, you take a 5/5 and you just move one box off to the other and you listen and you look, if it takes them 10 seconds to recognize mama's not home, how long does it take those bees that are in the shake yard that you pulled the frames out, you laid 5 or 8 frames on the outside of this box, queen mother is still inside the box. How long does it take those bees that are on the comb that are on outside of the box to recognize they don't have a queen? Some would say maybe as soon as 10 seconds, maybe a minute, maybe 10 minutes, right? So let me ask you this. Okay, let's say it's 10, let's say it's an hour, right? Those bees are being now shook out of their colony. They're being bulked up into shaker boxes with maybe bees even from different colonies. How long does it take before the colonies, how long does it take the bees who are now without a queen decide and have a hive mind that says, we are moving forward, here's the things that we have to do? Are they waiting around for the next opportunity? Or is it possible that those bees right then and there, some bees develop a hive mind that says, we are now in control of this future. It is up to us to survive. So the only potential outcome of a colony moving forward are all the things that we do. And here's what I mean by that. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. It happens with nukes and it happens with packages, but you see it the most in packages. A lot of times when you have queen failure in packages, it's not because it was a poor quality queen. I believe that it comes down to the fact that when those bees were originally separated from that cohesive unit, they have developed a hive mind that says, we are moving the future forward ourselves. When they're in that scenario, they are already in, we need to make a queen mode. How many times have you seen a package queen get waxed up all the way around both sides of it? How many times have you seen those packages? They will let a queen out just long enough to let her lay one egg and then supersede. Here's the next step, and here's why I feel that what I see supports this. I have personally seen this where that package colony rejects the queen that was in the cage. Okay, no problem. Maybe it was the queen. Maybe she was damaged. Maybe there was something about her they didn't like. Guess what? No problem. You give them another queen. Oh, they chew that one to pieces. They don't like her. Okay, we'll give her another queen. And no matter what you do, they destroy every queen you give them. Why is that? Because they feel like it is up to them for that genetic future. You put a frame of eggs in there. Now all of a sudden they're making their own queen. Everything's fine, no problem. But no matter what you do, they are not taking a queen, no matter how you do it, no matter how you switch it up. Sometimes I do believe that those bees develop a hive mind from the beginning that they are in control of their destiny. And that means sometimes they are going to be making that queen cell. They are going to be using the material to make the queen. So no matter what mated queen you give them, they won't take it. I've seen it in packages and I've seen it in nukes. I think there's something to that. And I think a lot of package failure is because of that. Some of it can certainly be the queen is just not juicy enough. That can happen too. But there's a lot going on when you think about how a package comes to be, pun intended. There's a lot going on there. When in doubt, egg it out. What do you think, Bruce?
Well, I think it never hurts to lock, that's one thing I do with swarms. If I want to keep them in the box, typically throw a frame of brood in there, they'll stay. If you got a swarm, you just put them in a bunch of empty frames, or they won't sometimes. If you put a frame of brood in there, it gives them something to do. And even if, lots of times in swarm queens, they'll supersede them pretty quickly. But if you give them the resources, they can do that. So another concern, Greg, kind of moving on a little bit. I know I've never had packages like I said, but I think another concern that people may see is when there's a lot of drift that happens sometimes. I don't know if that has to do with what you mentioned before. Maybe the pheromone isn't as strong, some queens more than others, or why they tend to drift like that. Do you have a thought on that?
Well,
or have you seen that? I don't know. I've just heard that happens.
I think it can, but I think there's Mr. Ray Deese has a fantastic comment here. Matter of fact, I even had the chance to talk to Corey about this, especially when it comes to our poor experience with trying to get VSH Italians to stick, to trying to get those into our outfit. We had tremendous challenges. And I asked Corey the question, do you think bees are racist? Wait till you see that interview. I think it's going to shed some light. And it's, in no way is this a reflection of Corey or VSH. That's just the catalyst. What I mean by that, and it goes to Mr. Ray Deese's question. And by the way, good to see you on here, Ray. Do you think genetics determines the queen's laying, like you said, Greg, 21 to 45? I think maybe there's something to that. But I think what I'm interested in, the part of your comment here, is actual genetics. Sometimes these bees are in tune to things that we can't see, that we don't know, that I think is genetic in nature. Right? Let's say you do have, well, no matter what the nuke or the package is, what if that queen is a straight Italian queen that is being introduced to a Carney Caucasian package or a Carney Caucasian nuke? Is anyone aware that there may be very intense introduction challenges because maybe bees are racist? And racist, I don't mean it in the clickbaity human sense of it, but in the fact that bees detect the difference between these genetic lines and they say, hey, that is not what we're about. That is not who we are. That is not something is not right here. I'm going to tell you 100% that is true. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that later. Those little tiny things make a big difference. And it's hard. I don't, not that it's hard to talk about that, but it's hard to have a perspective or an opinion on that unless you've had a lot of rotations, a lot of different opportunities to kind of see those things. But Ray Deese, do you think genetics determines the queen's laying, like you said, 21 or 45 days? I think there's even more to it than that. I think it comes down to not just timing, but nutrition, timing of the year on the pollen and the nectar. Now, what is the overall colony's viral load? How nutritious is the food that she has? Right? Mm-hmm. All those things I think do matter on the queen performance, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to slow down a little bit because I'm going to get fired up, and then it's going to be 3 hours here, and we got a lot more to talk about.
All of that said, we've discussed nukes, and that conversation just exploded. You see what I'm doing there?
I see what you're doing there, Brian.
See? And we discussed packages a little bit. There's a great question here.
Oof.
Huh?
And in my exuberant haste, I failed to mention one of the single greatest uses for a package. And Mr. Toby Reeder, looking forward to seeing you here soon. But Toby says, I had some deadouts this summer. Would spring packages be the way to fill those voids? I'm going to say 100%, hands down, yes. And here's the reason why. If you can get a package on that comb, you're going to protect one of the most valuable resources in that colony, which is that drawn comb. If you let that go into nuke season, hive beetles are going to find any of the protein residue left, and they're going to make a mess. If they're already done and there's nothing left for them, the wax moths will find it, and they will render those combs nearly useless and make a massive mess of what you're seeing. If the mice haven't already got to it and the hive beetles don't want it, the wax moths will. And that's the last thing in the world that you want. So for folks that, like a lot of folks are ordering packages because of that. They have deadouts and they can't wait until the 1st of June to put nuke bees on there. The nukes are coming with 5 frames. They don't want the frames. They just want the bees on the comb to protect the assets. And when folks have deadouts, that's horrible. Right? I hate that for folks. But I have to remind folks, it is not a total loss. All the work that those bees did on comb is extremely valuable. And it is, I think, in folks' best interest to get that comb in use as fast as they can early in the year, right? And let that be a launch pad and a catapult. Those package bees, if you put package bees on drawn comb, buddy, watch out, right? Because they will go, especially if they've got nutrition, if they've got feed, and if the weather participates and behaves, you've really got something. And in our neck of the woods, I've seen it over and over again. A lot of folks will testify and say that their package bees are making a honey crop in the first year. Now, don't get me going on the bee clubs and everyone's saying don't expect it. I'm just telling you what actually happens, and package bees can produce honey first year.
Yeah, I think speaking of that, I know James was talking about that earlier, and a couple of people were kind of going back and forth a little bit about honey the first year. And I think it's probably a good idea if you're a mentor, if you have bees, or if you're helping, someone get started, or even in your own situation, to kind of under promise and over deliver. Sometimes the bees will do that. You might, I think the idea is that you don't want to expect a honey crop, but many times you'll end up with one if treated properly. So it's not that it won't happen, but I just think if you promise that to your mentor, if you expect that as a first year beekeeper, you'll may be disappointed, but lots of times they'll do it. If you get them in there early enough, and if they're good bees that take off, you absolutely can get a honey crop. It might not be 100 pounds. It might be in some years, some areas, but you should be able to get some honey sometimes on the bees. And obviously, as with established production colonies, if it's a bad year, you're not going to get honey to speak of anyway, or not the crop you may expect. And so there's so many variables, but there is no hard, fast rule. There is no absolute, Greg.
There is none.
As far as honey goes. You very well may get honey, or you might not that first year. It is possible, but it's not always probable.
See that? That's right, a great
point. Well said, Bruce. Fall
2017.
First harvest. Look at that. Look at that.
Packages.
Would you look at that? Would you look at that? Nice.
Anyway, wow,
Bruce, we could spend all night really getting into the weeds, but I think we have really covered quite a few of the pros and the cons on it. So in short, if you are looking for a quick start, you don't want to wait. If you want to see the beautiful process of bees making something from nothing, or if you need to replace dead out equipment, I really do feel that packages are the way to go. Also, if you are someone who's looking for expansion, and you are designating a specific outyard just for honey production, and you don't have the bees, or you can't allocate the splits of the bees of your own to do it, then I do think packages are a smart investment to put into an outyard to grow out for the honey crop. And if you want to do something different with those genetics, no problem. Grow them up, get the crop, right? And then either split them out or replace the queens once you have captured that asset. If you run the numbers, you might just find, you would blow your mind, that if you invest in a package and then pull the honey crop off, not only has the honey crop paid for the bees, you are now have a net gain scenario. Now, what do you want to do with them? Now you're just growing them up to split them up, or growing them up for next year. Like, that's an important thing when you look at the dollars and cents of it. Packages can be very valuable for that reason. It's timing is everything.
You could also it's almost like this is like the Stream Team infomercial right now, because I'll say, but wait, there's more.
But
you could also speak to your beekeeper who you're purchasing these packages from, and let's say, well, you're really not interested in getting honey that first year. You just want to grow some things. And you can say, hey, Mr. Beekeeper or Mrs. Beekeeper, don't
leave them out.
I don't want to leave them out. Okay.
They're better beekeepers than the men are most of the time, to be honest.
See? And you could say, hey, by any chance, do you happen to have any extra queens?
There we go.
And if so, could I purchase a few?
Buckle up.
Certainly, yes, I have some extra queens. And then you could just split out those packages.
Brian may or may not have a video of specifically that. How do you rub 2 pennies together and get a nickel in the bee yard?
That's right.
You buy a package, you buy an extra queen, you put 1.5 pounds in each little nuke box, right? Yeah. And you let them cruise, let them grow into something special that goes into the wintertime.
There might have been a video also of someone by the name of Greg, I think his name was, and it was installing a package that had been sitting around for a little while. So the bees were not happy as it was. And I remember right when the shaking started to occur, there was just an immediate, Loved it.
Some say the only way to get this pretty is to get stung in the face a whole bunch. I think they're lying because there's nothing pretty about it. But I have gotten stung a bunch, and in the face a bunch, and the nose and the eyes and the ears and all that. It definitely doesn't make you any prettier. I can tell you that. So whoever said that, fake news, Brian. It's fake news. But hey, let's get into some of these comments here. Let's hear from the folks here. Oh, that's a good dance, Brian. I like that. Here we go. Look at this, Mr. Joey Rawls. I think I'm going to see Joey here in a couple of days. Nuke or package? He says, I have no preference. You know what? Which one is better? The answer is yes. Nice job, Bruce. High five. Look at that. Yeah, they are. They are. Which is a Nuke in a package? It's a slotted screwdriver. It's a Phillips screwdriver. That's it. Which one is going to do the job the best for you? You got to ask the question, well, what job is it that I'm really looking to actually try to do? Ask questions, know who you're buying it from, trust the beekeeper, and have a clear line of communication. And I think that will be super, super helpful. Let's cruise through some of these comments here. Iowa Layens Beekeeping George, packages don't come with questionable comb. Package is a better education for new beekeepers. I would agree with a lot of that, and the fact that there is some mighty questionable comb out there. You don't get that with package bees. And what I like about package bees, and I think where a lot of folks like them, is they're seeing the whole thing. There is something beautiful about seeing them start from nothing, just like a swarm. A swarm is beautiful in the fact that they come with nothing other than a full honey gut and ambition to survive. Hopefully, don't get me started on all the other things, but there's a beauty to that. I've got a whole talk on that, the beautiful swarm, and why I do think that there are really beautiful and actually life lessons to learn from the honeybees. It's really, really cool. But that's not something that I bank on for genetics. It is not something I bank on for growth. And it is not something I depend on. The only thing about a swarm that I really make sure that I do is try not to let my bees do it. Mr. Tom Nolan. Hey, Tom, it was good to see you in Wisconsin, not just a couple days ago. And you know what, Tom, guys, I know it's just us talking. Whatever you do, what Tom really loves to hear is just say, welcome, 51st state of the USA. Tom loves it if you say that. Loves it. Loves it.
Yeah, but you
Tom
know what?
Says, what?
If they don't play their cards right, Canada might be like 52, 53. So they need to get on board, and they're playing too many games. Just saying.
Are you saying they should fill out an application to be included? Okay, we'll see.
Exactly.
Tom he's going red right now. Oh! Tom's awesome. Tom says in Canada, large commercial beekeepers will bring in early packages to replace their winter losses, but this may not be the best option for new beekeepers with no drawn comb. Yeah, drawn comb is really, really huge for packages to take off quick. If you have good foundation and you keep feed on them, then the packages really become not a lot different than the swarm. Get them fed up and get them juiced up, then they will start to draw that comb. But package bees, they are a tool for a certain job for sure. There's a lot of learning opportunities with them too. Highland Honey bought 2 nukes, wasn't allowed to inspect, go home to find 3 broken frames and approximately 1 cup of live bees for $2.25. That is horrible. That is absolutely horrible. And I hope what happened is as soon as you had a problem, you weren't the guy to get on Facebook and say, oh, this dirty dog, this. Hopefully you reached out and called the person and said, hey, I just got back and here's what I found. And hopefully if it was a reputable person who was operating with integrity, they would have said, oh my gosh, that's horrible. I don't know how that happened. Let's make it right. And they made it right. Anything in the world is possible. Like, I don't care who I'm going to be the first one to say, right? Even I'm going to make mistakes, right? Even I will make mistakes on a nuke. or a queen or anything. Sometimes things get by you, right? The most important thing is, what are you going to do about it? When you mess up, you fess up, you make it right. You want that end user, that customer, to be happy with the product, to have confidence in the product, and to be able to trust you for advice moving forward. If it ain't right, you fix it.
See that comment there from Highland Honey? He says he called them too bad, so sad.
That's a problem. And I'm not the guy that puts people on public blast notice, but it would be very hard for me not to do that. If somebody said too bad, so sad. Now, here's the thing. Outside of price, right? If you didn't know what you were getting and they said it was a too bad, so sad, no guarantees, you know, I would hope there are folks who are going to stand behind it. But if you are literally, here's the thing though, and I don't mean anything by this, but if you're buying nukes from somebody who bought nukes from somebody who bought nukes from somebody, and those have already been on the road for 7 days, jammed up into a box, and then you're just the fourth party involved who bought them for $225 because the last guy bought them for $210, the guy before bought them from $190, and the guy before bought them from $170. I'm not saying it's your fault. But moving forward, what questions can you ask to make sure you're getting a quality product, right? Just because it was a horrible scenario doesn't mean that it wasn't valuable. However, I don't like that the person said, too bad, so sad. That is not the way to handle that. And that is not a way to have a return customer. And that is not the way to get a word of mouth audience for your product. That is terribly unfortunate. We're going to cruise through some comments here. Mr. Philip Morse, RTX Honeybees. Good to see him on here. Are queens in packages always new? That is a great question. I think by and large, it is in the financial best interest for efficiency. You know, package suppliers, they're not going through and finding, oh, here's my old dirty queen. I'm going to cage that and then put that into a package so I can get rid of her. I think what you end up having is you have a colony that's being shook out, and it could be a last year or a year before queen that actually gets shook into the package. They still put either a marked or a fresh queen from this year in the cage, in the package, but the mama queen in the actual package itself, she's trumping, she's winning, right? So they'll kill, and the folks may not even know that. They install the package, they put the queen in, the package kills the queen that's in the actual queen cage, right? They eat through the candy. They even sometimes drag all the mess out, and you look inside of there and you've got a queen that's like 2 or 3 years old. She's got a different mark on her. Sometimes I think she just got shooken to begin with unintentionally. But are queens in packages always new? No. And not all queens and nukes are necessarily new either. And sometimes they're too new. You know, they're brand new, like just hatched new. You know, you never know.
I watched a video one time. I think people do packages differently, but the video I saw, it looked like they had built these colonies up extremely strong. So they were just packed out with bees, like 3 or 4 boxes deep, you know, and then they just had a queen excluder, and they were just taking all the bees. And it was early in the season, I think. They took all the bees from the top couple of boxes and shook them in the packages somehow. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure what the process is. But so to me, I don't know if they shook them all down, let the bees work up like we do sometimes doing splits, and there was brood up above or not. I don't know if they were young bees or what it was, but they were being real careful to try not to get the queens. And then I don't know if they probably didn't have a queen excluder on the shaker box. They just probably, but I remember it seems like they had it set up so there was not much risk of getting a queen in the packages, but I don't know how it works. There's always risk. There's always risk. Yeah, there's always risk.
How many times has there, have been a very young or a virgin queen who can slip right through an excluder like that? That can 100% happen.
True.
And you can have excluders, especially if they're metal, that have just a little tiny bend, right? And whoop, for some reason, those queens they have a radar and they know where that little place is, and boop,
you know what happened to me? My very first package. So I installed them. Okay. Put the queen in. All right. I go back 7 days later. It's when they said, I knew nothing. So looked at, and then it was my mom had a hive that we set up. I had mine. So we checked hers first, found the queen, saw she was doing foundationless. So we saw some comb being built out, and it was like, oh, cool. This is awesome. Queen was out, saw her. Good. Go over to mine. I locate the cage, pull it out. Queen was still in it, and she was dead.
Mm.
No mentor, 1 week. And I called the place up and I said, hey, this is what I found. And the lady answered the phone and told me, she said, it happens. Go in there and look. And if you know how to spot a queen, there's probably a queen that was shaken in there. And sure enough, then I looked and there were eggs and I found another queen.
There you go. Yeah. There's a great question coming up, and we're gonna talk about what happens if things aren't going right. What now what do you do? And this is why it is very important to be working with people who actually work with bees. When there's a problem, they're going to be the ones who can take care of it. If you're just buying bees from somebody who's flipping bees, or maybe aren't actually even raising bees on any kind of scale, you're going to be in a tight spot. Mr. Todd Prater, Loma Vista Bee Company, talking about almonds, growers have been warned that beekeepers may be coming up short on their contracts this season. Colony loss of up to 70% is being seen. Queen breeders will be busy. Guys, that's a valid point. For so many reasons, outside of flooding, outside of fire, right? There were areas of immense drought at the end of last year that 100% affected the overall nutrition and well-being of the colonies going into the wintertime. And some of those are struggling or have already perished. They're just not going to make it. It's not just as simple as getting a nuke or a package or picking the right one. Like, no matter what you do, we are still at the mercy of Mother Nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that ebbs and flows. It goes in cycles. And right now it's in a season where it sometimes feel like the scales aren't very balanced, but it is what it is. So that's a great point there, Todd. Now this is such a good question. Do you guys think this is coming from Tom or Melissa? I'm not sure. What warranty do you offer with your nukes and packages? What we tell every single person is keep a clear line of communication. If you see anything that's not right, if it's not performing, give it 7 days and give us a call, right? Now, if it's a package, you can call 2 days later, but hey, there is a time frame that it actually takes for a package to be able to even judge if anything is going wrong or right. With the package, it can sometimes take up to 10 days, maybe even 14 days to figure out what's going on, especially when it's weather related. The big thing on packages is put feed on those colonies immediately and keep feed on them, right? If it takes up to 3 to 5 days for the queen to be released out of that cage, right? Sometimes it can take up to a week before she starts to lay if there's no pollen coming in, if there's no nectar coming in. Just because you put a pollen patty on, just because you put feed on top, doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be enough to stimulate her and the colony to move things forward to laying. Especially if you're on brand new foundation, they got to draw the foundation out. They have to have a place to do that first before she'll start laying. If you're on drawn comb, they got to clean it out, but they still have to have the right nutrition to take care of the babies before mama will start laying the eggs to create those babies. So some of those things take time, and that is where packages can be a little bit challenging sometimes. If it takes 21 days for the brood cycle of a worker bee, and if worker bees live 45 days old, you have a very light window, a very tight window of margin of error that everything can still work out and be okay. What you can't do on a package is wait 30 days later and said all the bees are dead. I don't know what happened. And by the way, I don't have any photos. And by the way, I want a refund. That's where we cross the line. Here's what I always recommend. So Tom, Melissa, what we always recommend is keep a clear line of communication with folks. Ask any question, that's totally fine. But understand that nukes or packages, they have a timeline that things have to unfold. and find success in. Nukes, that's a little different. On packages specifically, right? 3 days later, you can't be calling and saying, "Queen's not laying eggs. I think there's something wrong." The queen is probably still in the cage just getting out. She's got to get her feet under her. She's got to get her bearings. She has to start laying. It's going to take some time, okay? But the most important thing, and I'm not, it's sometimes hard to judge the whole of a bushel of apples on the rotten ones, but this is worth stating. It has happened. There are people who are scammers, and there are people who do want something for nothing. We want to believe everyone is great and is good and is not trying to take advantage of somebody, but that's not always the case. Sometimes somebody will buy 1 or 2 or 10, whatever the units are, and say, "I want a complete refund. I'm not happy with it." Well, what's wrong? I'm just not happy. Well, what can I do to make you happy? Well, I've changed my mind. This isn't happy. Well, the bees aren't doing what they should. Well, okay, let's talk about that. What do you think the bees should be doing? The most important thing, please forward me photos. You have got to have photos. If people can't take photos of what they're seeing and share it to you, I'm not joking. 9 times out of 10, you can get to the heart of a problem with those photos. And sometimes they may say, "The queen's not laying. Here, look, here's pictures," right? And I'll zoom in and then I'll circle it and I'll kick him back and I say, "You see those little grains of rice thing that are in the center of those cells all the way through? Those are actually eggs. So just because you don't see a queen in the colony doesn't mean she's not there. She is there, right? But she's the hide and seek champ of 2025. She's laying eggs and here's the evidence." So keep a clear line of communication. Take care of your customer. If something went wrong with the queen, take care of it. Just replace it. We replace very few queens because they were bad queens. A lot of the times, folks will say, I think there's something wrong with the queen. I don't see any eggs. They're just not acting right. I don't know what it is. I need a new queen." And I'll say, "Okay, no problem. Come pick up a queen," right? I can't tell you how many times those folks, 45 minutes later, I'll get a call and say, "Oh, I'm really embarrassed. I went to go install that queen that I just got from you, and then I saw the queen, and I saw eggs, and I saw larvae. I guess I wasn't looking hard enough the first time. Now what do I do with this queen?" And I said, "Well, have you ever made a split? Have you ever?" And you walk them through what to do with that. Or they can also bring it back if they want to. But sometimes folks don't know when something is a problem and when it isn't. But photos are very helpful. It cuts through 99% of that. But if you made a mistake, right, make it right. Sometimes the customer makes a mistake and they'll say it. "You know, I saw her, I smushed her, she was dead, I did this," right? Take care of them. Make sure that they're happy. But we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Not all customers are doing that, and not all suppliers and producers are doing that. Find the middle ground, clear line of communication. When something goes wrong, let's talk about it. Let's look at some photos. Let's find the path forward so you can be successful. That was a great question via Honeybees. That was so good. That was probably Melissa. Bruce?
That question was huge.
It was huge. It was bigly. The likes of which have never been seen. Bruce, I want to thank you for your super chat. Hashtag nukes versus packages. Hashtag stream team. Hashtag be the lighthouse. Hashtag stir it up, baby. Mr. Steve Amos became a YouTube member. Steve, man, thanks so much for doing that. It was great seeing you at the Honeybee Expo down in Louisville. It's always great to see Steve. And you know what's really fun? When you see folks and you're communicating with them and they're in the comments, right? And you just see like the thumbnail picture of who they are. Sometimes you cannot fully appreciate the stature of a man until you're in the same room. And Steve Amos, you have to look. I look up to Steve Amos for a lot of reasons. One of them is height. That dude's tall.
You know who Steve reminds me of? And it's a
Who's
compliment. Just a compliment to Steve. Merlin Olsen.
Okay.
Can you see it? Just a
I can see
mountain of a
it.
man, just a gentle giant.
Mountain of a man, a gentle giant. 100%. Mr. James Noel, member for 1 month. Thank you for that. Look at this. Castle Hives, member for 29 months. Haven't ran him off yet. Good
It's going
night.
to be huge.
Miss Lisa Gowan, Grammy Midwives Hive in Homestead. Thank you for your super chat. She says, thanks for all you do. Y'all are fab. Thank you. And then the one and only Mike's Bees LLC, Travis and Mike Art, top-notch guys. Thank you for your super chat. Great information on nukes and packages. Man, I think we got through all of those in under 2 hours. Can you guys believe it? There is so much more that we could get into, but I think we've done a pretty good. We've actually said a lot more that a lot of folks are probably going to get their feelings hurt. They're going to get their stoves stepped on. There is some dirty truths about packages and nukes, but know your supplier, know the beekeeper, know what you're working with, ask some questions, right? The main thing is you want to be able to work with somebody who is actually raising bees. One of the worst things that somebody can do is they see a Facebook post, they see somebody is selling bees, and they just buy them. They don't know what they're getting. Folks who are doing nothing but flipping packages and flipping nukes, that they aren't even raising bees, they don't even have the skill set to raise the bees. How are they going to make things right if something goes wrong? How are they going to help you tell you what to do next? How are they going to dig into their own stock with a queen to help replace yours? How are you going to do that? Work with somebody that you trust, that's operating with integrity, that has a long list of references, that you hear their name and people speak highly of. Be very careful just buying bees because somebody is flipping them, because sometimes things go wrong, and you want to be able to lean on those folks to be able to make things right.
Yeah, I think too, Greg, that we have to realize too that these are bees, and that, like Spin mentioned, we've hit on it already tonight, that odds are you're not going to have 100% success in all your colonies forever. So, things can happen. Colonies can crash, and it may not be the fault of the person that sold you the bees or you. It just sometimes happens. And so have a little bit of grace with yourself and those people who are providing this service to you as well. We've talked about a lot of different things, advantages, disadvantages, but we still have to remember that it is beekeeping, and there are going to be some difficult things to go through and to learn.
That's a great point. At the end of the day, guys, right? We can only do so much. Mother Nature can only do so much. The supplier can only do so much. At the end of the day, we do have to accept the fact that they are a bunch of bugs in the box. Sometimes they've got a mind of their own, and we can't figure it out. We can't know all of those things. And that's a hard thing to accept. When you slap leather and you pay for something, you are expecting a certain product. And sometimes it's neither your fault, the supplier's fault. Sometimes the bees are just going to do what the bees are going to do. That's a fact too. So that being said, we have managed to keep it just under 2 hours on a highly controversial, stir the pot subject that I hope is getting a lot more folks to understand some of the in and the outs. Again, which is better? I'm telling you, we sell packages, we sell nukes, we raise our nukes, we raise queens. I am telling you, which one is better? The answer is yes. They are both. One is always better than the other if you understand the job that you need them to do. Sometimes you need a Phillips, sometimes you need a slotted, sometimes you need a chainsaw. Right, Bruce? Or a table saw in your case.
Yeah.
I like that photo where it was the snow thing.
Yeah.
That really, I gotta say, I never, when I'm with Bruce or I'm talking to Bruce, I never once do I think about, oh yeah, by the way, it's Bruce who's missing a finger. Like I never even think about that. And then I saw the photo of the snow and I'm like, wow.
I showed that to my wife and she was like, is that some kind of alien or something?
That is called, Bruce is humble and is willing to share with humility and humor a very hard lesson learned, because I guarantee you it wasn't as funny or as easy to talk about when it happened, but it happens.
Yeah.
I could show pictures, but it was kind of gross, so I probably won't.
Yeah.
Man, there's so many folks. Stan Gore, great job of discussing nukes and packages. Tom Nolan, it depends. That is the correct answer. Which one's better? It depends. Absolutely. Unless we're talking about which one's better, the USA. I'm just kidding. I won't go there, Tom. I love you to death. It was so good to see Tom. I really like that guy. He's humble. He is really, though, a displaced hillbilly. The fellow belongs in the hills of Ohio for sure. So many great folks. I quickly shout out Sacramento Beekeeper, the Beehive Homestead, Mr. Gary Stewart. Who else do we have in here? Mr. J.W. Irwin himself is in the house. The Beehive Homestead, Richard Briner Jr., Barry Brown, the Barry Brown, sweet talking the ladies. Mr. Barry Brown, the man, the myth, the legend, the barbecue aficionado. Hey, if you're looking for barbecue sauce, Barry, you got to leave a comment on where folks can find your barbecue sauce. Now, I know the guys, when we were getting the samples in the video, like they were pushing me around and making us make a mess in that thing. But let me tell you, that was the best barbecue sauce I have ever had, Mr. Barry Brown.
That's the guy with that barbecue sauce.
That is the guy with the barbecue sauce, Mr. Barry Brown. Tag team there with Mr. Byron Ferris.
Wow.
Great cream honey. Yeah. So many great folks in here. Just want to say thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Which one's better, packages or nukes? Don't waste your money. You got to know what the job is, the job that needs to be done before you can select the right tool. That is a fact. Guys, next week, whose channel are we on? Looks like Brian's. The Castle Hives YouTube channel next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Bruce, I'm looking forward to seeing you here in just a couple days. I was going to say, man, I wonder where my bee jacket is. And then I got up off my chair and I noticed it's on the back of my office chair here. So now I got to find some gloves just in case. I got an early morning. We're going to get the rest of the trailer loaded, and we're going to be southbound and down. We're going to be looking forward to bringing the very best wax-dipped equipment on the market down to Alabama. Folks, if it doesn't have our brand, it doesn't meet the mark. There is a lot of wax-dipped equipment on the market. There's only one Endura Hive. We'll talk a lot more about that later, but looking forward to seeing Bruce and Mike and Joey and Toby and Dennis and Lisa and Robert and Brian and whoever else I forgot. It's going to be awesome. The weather sounds nice. I might have to bring some suntan lotion and flip-flops. Brian, can you imagine that? 70 degrees, 67 maybe.
I can't talk to
the
either.
Bees are going to be buzzing. They're going to have that, that sound that get the hive tool in there. You crack that migratory lid and you get that little, you fold it open, and then all you hear is just a, ooh, and you have that smell and the warmth, and the whole entire thing is going on. We get to do that over and over and over. Brian, I am not trying to rub that in your face, but I am trying to rub that in your face.
You know what's going to happen?
Just hope they're still alive.
Saturday, when I'm up here in the cold, instead of the group text, instead of just getting a picture of Bruce's feet in flip-flops, I'm going to get a picture of
84 stings in Greg's hands. No, just kidding.
Well, no, I'm going to get a picture of the two of you in flip-flops with Bruce's flag.
Oh, yeah. That'd be nice.
We have to do that.
Yeah, tongs and some bratwurst on the grill. Wouldn't that be nice? Nice glass of sweet tea.
I'm going to be in a tree on Saturday.
Hey, Bruce, we need to get some of that. What's that? Is it zinc oxide? What's that stuff you put on your nose when you go to the beach?
I don't know.
We should get some of that white stuff on there and just be Sunburned Beekeepers Club. And that'd be nice. That's going to be a lot of fun. Well, hey, guys, I've got a lot of work to do still to get everything ready for the Alabama equipment run. But, man, I'm looking forward to that. Thanks again for spending some time with us tonight. Hey, after all of that talk, if you're still on the fence and you're in Ohio and you're trying to figure out, what do I do? Do I want to buy a package? Do I want to buy a nuke? Go to our website, naturesimagefarm.com. We have both packages and nukes available. I guarantee you the best experience that you're going to have free with everyone who buys their bees with us is free hands-on learning every other Saturday here at the Learning Yard. We meet in the shop, classroom style, talk with you exactly what's going on with the bees, what to do, what to look out for. More importantly, we take all that information and go right out to the Learning Yard here at Nature's Image Farm and apply that hands-on, guide you through the entire year so you can be your best. It makes a big difference for a lot of folks, and I think you'll enjoy that too. If that wasn't enough, we have a full line of equipment here in our supply shop. Whether you need smokers, suits, frames, boxes, treatments, feed, pollen patties, or just a high five in the beekeeping season, every Friday, Saturday, 10 to 5, we're going to be right here helping you along, making sure that you be successful. That is our mission. Help you have the best year ever, help you grow and meet whatever goals that you have. So if you're looking for packaged bees or nukes, check us out, naturesimagefarm.com. And if you're still listening, we're still taking some pre-orders on the new Copper Dip Plus Wax Dip boxes. naturesimagefarm.com. Thanks again for tuning in tonight. And as always, I want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Hey, Bruce, get the sunscreen out, would you?
Hi, I'm Greg Burns, founder of Nature's Image Farm and Endura Hive wax-dipped equipment. Hey, as large family beekeepers, we saw a major need to do way better in protecting our investment with our beekeeping equipment from the elements for the long haul. So I coupled our practical beekeeping experience with our wood science background to create the Endura Hive wax dip line of beekeeping equipment. Our unique wax dip process expels water from the wood, replaces and impregnates it with our proprietary blend of microcrystalline wax, offering superior weather protection without the mess or expense of paint. Our equipment is protected from the weather inside and out, preventing box rot, fungal growth, and decomposition. That's a huge savings in both time and money. No more reworking tired, worn out boxes year after year. Our wax-dipped equipment is proudly made in the USA. So protect your investment with Endura Hive wax-dipped equipment. No paint, no rot, no hassle. Endura Hive, built to endure.